Start at the beginning.
Yeah, yeah. And when you come to the end, stop.
Alice in Wonderland has been adapted dozens of times, but arguably the most iconic version is Walt Disney's animated feature from 1951. Disney's version of the story has, for many, eclipsed the original John Tenniel illustrations from 1864 in the public consciousness. The movie also stands out among Disney classics in that it has no apparent plot. What it does have is great characters, great acting, great design, great music, and also a subtle little plot buried down there below the surface.
Ah, Charlie Luther Days.
This was a passion project. Disney had tried to get Alice in Wonderland off the ground his whole career, starting with the Alice comedies at Laugh-O-Gram Studios, which began even before he moved to California. He did an early Mickey cartoon, Through the Mirror. Both are adventures, the brave outsider facing bizarre new circumstances. The studio finally made a full-length adaptation in 1951. This was nestled between the much more conventional movies Cinderella and Peter Pan, which brought the Disney studio into the Silver Age full of traditional storytelling. But Alice is far from straightforward. Walt's enthusiasm for this movie was clear. The first ever Disney television special was an hour-long promotion for it on Christmas Day, 1950. A few years later, a dark ride was wedged into the Anaheim amusement park, built atop another ride's building. A fairground spinning ride was redesigned as the Mad Tea Party, made unforgettable thanks to its music. Upon its release, the movie lost $500,000. Yet it has stayed popular, earning well over its original budget in a 1974 re-release. The 1951 characters are featured regularly in Disney parks, Disney kids' books, and merchandise. So something definitely worked. Walt Disney had bought the rights to Tenniel's famous illustrations of the book, which would have been terrifying to see on screen. Thankfully, he was wooed off course by the brash modernism of Mary Blair. Blair had strutted her stuff during the 1940s and really impressed Walt with her style. Blair is probably best known to non-Disney nerds as the stylist behind It's a Small World. She reimagined Alice as a mid-century modern fantasy, and it really works. Disney's Alice borrows liberally from Paramount's 1933 Alice, which is a star-studded special effects piece. But even with shots mimicking the earlier film, the look of this film is unique thanks to Mary Blair. Kids and maybe adult viewers will probably not think much about art design while watching this, but they will remember two things: a fabulous cast of characters and music. The cast is fleshed out by excellent comic animation and brilliant voice acting by an amazing group of character actors: Sterling Holloway,
A Cheshire Cat.
Jerry Colonna,
Very interesting. Who's Dinah?
Ed Wynn,
Oh, what a delightful child.
Verna Felton.
Get to the part where I lose my temper.
Lesser-known stars like Bill Thompson, J. Pat O'Malley, Larry Gray, and Richard Hayden turn in memorable performances. Disney's legendary sound effects artist Jimmy McDonald pops up as the Dormouse.
Up above the world you fly, like a tea tray in the sky.
And Clarence Nash, the voice of Donald Duck, meows as Dinah. But 13-year-old Catherine Beaumont, who would return as Wendy in Peter Pan 2 years later, anchors the whole show. Her Alice is everything the book promised: wide-eyed, idealistic, curious, stubborn, proper yet precocious. Carroll included a lot of poems in the Alice novels, several of which are turned into songs here: Old Father William, The Walrus and the Carpenter, but the film adds new contributions built on passing phrases from the book. Painting the Roses Red, A-E-I-O-U, and I'm Late are all perfect. 'Twas Brillig and the Unbirthday Song, which like Tweedledee and Tweedledum are actually nods to Through the Looking Glass, may be the best on the soundtrack. But two other musical moments really give structure to the film. A musical typically opens with an early song where the heroine sings about what she wants. Wouldn't it be loverly, part of your world, I dreamed a dream, etc. Alice's I Want song is A World of My Own. While most of this movie directly quotes from the novel, the World of My Own moment doesn't really exist in the book at all. Like all I Want songs, World of My Own is there to establish character and motivation. When the novel begins, Alice steals a peek at her sister's book, and she's disappointed that it has no pictures or conversations in it. But by page 3, she's already distracted by the White Rabbit and runs off on her adventures. In the movie, her sister's reading the book, a stiff English history, and Alice chafes against the formal education. This bit is kind of borrowed from the 1933 version. Alice tells her cat about her ideal world in which logic and education would be thrown out the window. Flowers could talk, rabbits could wear trousers.
Dogs and cats living together, mass hysteria.
Alice would immediately understand the flowers and Babbling Brook's language, no boring schoolwork required. As another character says famously in Through the Looking Glass, she's believed as many as 6 impossible things before breakfast. Alice is a philosophical anarchist. All her wishes come true after Alice drifts off to sleep. A rabbit in trousers passes by, and Alice follows him down the rabbit hole.
Down, down, down.
Into a wild wish fulfillment fantasy. Inside the rabbit hole, random objects float in midair, and even the soundtrack is discordant. In the novel, she woozily tries to use her school education to explain the situation. She uses math to work out how far she's fallen, and she uses vocabulary like longitude and latitude, which she clearly doesn't really understand, but the educational anchor makes her feel better. The movie discards all of that. Instead, Alice just muses about the people in China walking on their heads, but soon it's Alice who's on her own head. She gets her wish. Wonderland is full of illogic. Alice grows increasingly frustrated with the dodo, the mad tea party,
This is the stupidest tea party I've ever been to in all my life.
and the Cheshire Cat. What she wanted is not really what she wants. As she sings in the movie's second key moment, Very Good Advice,
I give myself very good advice, but I very seldom follow it.
there are 2 Alices. One plays by society's rules, the other one wishes them all away. She lectures herself.
For if one drinks much from a bottle marked poison, it's almost certain to disagree with one sooner or later.
Then she steadfastly disobeys that advice. And despite all of her bad decision-making, eating and drinking things that say, eat me and drink me, she clearly knows better. Also relatable. Her Very Good Advice comment comes in Chapter 1 of the book. Disney moved it into Act 3, the spotted movie storytelling where the hero hits rock bottom, what Joseph Campbell would call the abyss in the hero's journey. Alice gets lost in the dark Tulgey Wood and finds her attempts to go home frustrated by the very nonsense that she had wished into existence. She's sick and tired of her own dreams, and also the split between her knowledge and her behavior. So while Alice tries to work out who she is, everyone else repeatedly judges her to be somebody else. At the White Rabbit's house, Alice is assumed to either be a domestic servant or a monster, or both. In the flower garden, she's a weed. In the bird's nest, she's an egg-stealing serpent. Only the king, who is a lovable buffoon in the film, realizes that Alice is just a little girl. Everyone wants to tell Alice who she is, to the point that she's not so sure herself. And I think we can all relate to that. The book puts it this way.
And sometimes she scolded herself so severely as to bring tears into her eyes. And once she remembered trying to box her own ears for having cheated herself in a game of croquet she was playing against herself. For this curious child was very fond of pretending to be 2 people.
Of course, her doom in the movie comes from playing croquet against the Queen of Hearts. The film is very good at show, don't tell. Another line for the novel, never spoken in the movie, hangs over the bulk of it. When she meets the Cheshire Cat, he offers instructions to the March Hare and Mad Hatter's homes. Alice declares,
But I don't want to go among mad people.
Oh, you can't help that. Most everyone's mad here.
What's cut out, but is heavily implied, is the cat's next comment.
I'm mad. You're mad.
How do you know I'm mad? Said Alice.
You must be, said the cat, or you wouldn't have come here.
Curiouser, it's not just Alice who is split in 2. Wonderland, like Alice, works against its own nature. It looks like a madhouse, it claims to be a madhouse, but it acts like a school.
The time has come, the walrus said, to talk of other things, of shoes and ships and sealing wax and cabbages and kings.
Each new episode, despite its bizarre appearance, tries to teach her structure. Alice started all this by rebelling against formalized education, again an interpolation by the Disney studio since the history text on William the Conqueror,
the Earls of Mercia and Northumbria declared for him,
which Alice's sister is boring her with, was, in the book, a monologue by a mouse character who's cut out of the film. Once in Wonderland, all of the illogical characters she's conjured up try to tutor her. The doorknob advises preparation and foresight. The dodo teaches civics.
Nothing could be drier than a jolly caucus race.
Tweedledum and Tweedledee teach
Logic.
And
Manners.
And their presence, borrowed from Through the Looking Glass, is crucial, since they are the first to warn Alice about her weakness.
Oh, she's curious. The oysters were curious too, weren't they? Poor things.
Eat me, drink me. The caterpillar lectures Alice on poetry while singing the alphabet. Again, a subtle change by Disney. In the book, it's Alice on her own who recites How Doth the Busy Bee, the classic poem by Isaac Watts, you know, that hymnist behind Joy to the World and When I Survey the Wondrous Cross. But her words come out all wrong. Her bizarre parody version is about, instead of an industrious bee, a lazy crocodile who just eats what floats into his mouth. The film hands this parody to the imperious particular caterpillar as a schoolteacher's lecture on literature. The Mad Hatter and March Hare lecture her on table manners and social conversation.
Ah, but it's very rude to sit down without being invited.
I'll say it's rude. It's very, very rude indeed.
Very, very, very rude indeed.
Whereas in the book, they're simply prolonging an endless tea party because their clocks are eternally stopped at 6 p.m. The Queen of Hearts teaches Alice the absurd rules of social class.
Look up, speak nicely, and don't twiddle your fingers. Curtsy while you're thinking. It saves time.
Yes, Your Majesty.
And we end up in a farcical legal trial.
Sentence first, verdict afterward.
But that just isn't the way.
Always on.
Your ways, Your Majesty.
Yes, my child.
So while Wonderland is supposed to be a paradise of illogic, Disney's version is actually a satire on the stiff education that Alice dozed off to avoid. The novel has Alice breaking down slowly until she doesn't really know who she is anymore, and she was pretty wacky to begin with. The Wonderland characters are all threats or annoyances. The film, on the other hand, shows Alice bit by bit reconciling her bifurcated personality. She steadily resists the quack education she receives from the residents of Wonderland.
You can learn a lot of things from the flowers. Seems to me they could learn a few things about manners.
But she does acquire a better appreciation for logic and manners, and she can tell good government from bad government at the end, whereas in the beginning she simply joined into the nonsensical caucus race. In the Tulgey Wood, she rejects her addiction to nonsense.
Please, no more nonsense.
And that allows her to stand up to the Queen and her army.
Your Majesty, indeed. Why, you're not a queen. You're just a fat, pompous, bad-tempered old tyrant.
When she wakes up, once the dream becomes truly nightmarish, Alice seems to consider the entire experience just a marvelous adventure. She even quotes the caterpillar's crocodile poem to her sister.
How doth the little crocodile improve his shining tail?
Alice in Wonderland feels like a dream. Alice seems to be unpacking her anxieties and self-critiques, as we often do when we're asleep. As in the book, there's no clear resolution, but as the Duchess says in the novel,
everything's got a moral, if only you can find it.
Or you could just go with Alice's sister's summary.
Oh, for goodness sake. Alice, Oh, well. Come along, it's time for tea.